So hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Future Ready Students, How to Develop and Measure Higher Order Skills. I'm Dora Zahner, the Chief Academic Officer of the Council for Aid to Education, and I'm going to be the host and moderator today, and we appreciate everyone joining us. Today's webinar is brought to you by EdWeb as well as the Council for Aid to Education. So we are dedicated to improving student outcomes by helping educators like yourselves get a more complete picture of students' knowledge and skills through performance-based assessments. And you might be familiar with our assessments on critical thinking and problem solving called the CLA, CCRA, or SSA+. So without further ado, we took care of some housekeeping. Let's meet the panelists. We are joined today by Jimmy Hahn, the Director of Project Management with Unbounded, and Dr. Denise Mutlu, Senior Vice President of Assessment at Project Lead the Way. Welcome to both of you. And if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about yourselves and your background, Jimmy, let's start with you.
Hi, welcome everyone. Nice to meet you. I currently work again at Unbounded. We're a professional development organization that really aims to promote high quality, equitable instruction for all for educators and school leaders. So we work with a variety of school districts and schools across the country to provide professional development opportunities. Prior to joining Unbounded, I worked in New York City Department of Education for 7 years, primarily in the formative assessments office, helping our educators use free resources that they can really help students improve their learning and ultimately also help support educators in their teaching.
Thank you, Jimmy. And Denise?
Hi, welcome everyone. I'm Denise Mutlu. I am currently the Senior Vice President at Project Lead the Way, overseeing the assessments that I will be discussing later on today. We believe as Project Lead the Way, our philosophy is that we believe that all students, beginning at a young age, need access to real world and applied learning experiences that empower them to gain the skills that they need to thrive in college and beyond. I'm very happy to be here, and I've been with Project Lead the Way for the past 2 years. Prior to that, I was at College Board and ERB and New York City Department of Education, managing the assessment from admission to achievement testing, and my background is in test design and assessment development. So happy to be here. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Denise. And thank you, Jimmy. So before we get started, we just want to learn a little bit more about you as the attendees and your thoughts and your experiences. The goals for this webinar today is to learn the role of professional development in helping teachers nurture the growth of higher order skills in their students, how to transform instruction to go above and beyond traditional content areas, how to embed measurement of these essential skills into course content, the importance of these skills in today's secondary education leaders, as evidenced by the portrait of a graduate initiatives that we're seeing in many of the states and districts around the country, and why secondary, post-secondary institutions and employers value the mastery of higher order skills. So that's going to be a little bit. I'm going to share data that we do at CAE, research that we do at CAE about the college to career space. But before we start, Diane, if you wouldn't mind putting up the first poll question for the group, what is your current role in education? Let's see, we have school psychologist, ELL teacher, AP instructor online, school administrator, strategic partner, curriculum development program coordinator. Yeah, so um, several of you who are in the other. Hello, Alejandro saying hello. ELL teacher and coordinator, literacy coach. Great. Interesting backgrounds. And we see most are instructors, teachers, instructors joining us today. Thank you. Okay, so we have a good distribution of a good idea of the distribution of who's attending. Okay, next poll item, please. In your opinion, which of the following higher order skills is the most important for students to matter? So these are outside of content area. This is outside of ELA and math and science and social studies. What do people think? Wow. Critical thinking is way ahead with one person saying citizenship. Very interesting. I mean, personally, this is the research that I do. I work on critical thinking of high school and higher ed students. So I'm glad to see that the audience is also mirroring this idea that critical thinking skills are essential for future success. And I have data I'll share about this later. Next polling question: does your school or district or state intentionally teach these higher order skills? Awesome. It's great to see. We know that we're seeing, in terms of Portrait of a Graduate, that a lot of districts and states are now enacting. Critical thinking is almost on every single one that we've looked at. And it's really nice to see that schools and districts are intentionally teaching these skills because they are, as you said in the prior poll, that these are really important skills. Thank you, Marianne. Marianne is saying that they also offer critical thinking and leadership courses. Great. And then there's one last question, um, which is, if you are teaching these skills, how are you doing so? Most people are embedding it in the coursework, so content based and tied to curriculum. Which, Jimmy, your experience from NYCDOE, right? This is what you were working on, embedded these skills in content areas. Great, thank you. So now we're going to actually learn a little bit about high quality instruction. I'm going to turn this over to Jimmy.
All right, thank you, Doris. Just make sure. Okay. All right, so educators who provide GLEAM instruction develop students' high order skills essential for college and career readiness while affirming their cultures and identities. At Unbound Ed, we believe that GLEAM instruction and student learning experiences are critical for combating the structural racism that contributes to poor student outcomes. So, what does GLEAM mean? When we refer to grade level, we mean providing texts, tasks, and materials aligned to the appropriate college and career standards. Teachers have awareness of curriculum's grade level expectations and demands for rigor. They're also aware of prior grade level expectations students should have met to be prepared for current grade level learning. Engaging means fostering persistence in grade level work that builds students' interest tied to knowledge and culture without disrupting their beliefs about who they are, where they come from, and what they can become. Teachers have awareness of and accountability for the demand for rigor and productive struggle, and to use students' linguistic, local contextual cultural references to extend the intellectual capacity. Affirming is honoring and acknowledging students' ethnic, racial, and linguistic identities and their current and historical experiences within the context of grade level work. Teachers must demonstrate how students can use this learning in their world and the world at large. Teachers see, welcome, and affirm students' full humanity and respect and nurture all of their identities. The M in GLEAM stands for meaningful. This is understanding and critiquing dominant cultural norms and examining their community's social position to foster a sense of advocacy and change. As students need to gain knowledge, they look at the world and decide how the knowledge can move the learner and make a difference in the world. Teachers find room in the curriculum to develop student sociopolitical lens through discussion, debate, questioning, etc. This requires teachers' in-depth content knowledge, along with a cultural lens focused on their students local contextual outlook. And working from this GLEAM approach requires a change in the way we think about planning and providing instruction, but also how we think about students and how we interact with the curriculum. Only when mindset and planning are purposely put into the service of grade level, engaging, affirming, and meaningful instruction do we see the teacher actions and student experiences that exemplify culturally responsive and sustaining instruction. If educators begin with instruction and lessons that are not aligned to grade level standards, then they begin with low expectations. Grade level learning lifts up equitable instruction. Using grade level lessons is a starting point for scaffolds, supports, and productive struggle that exemplify grade level learning. But the reality is that standards aligned curriculum and grade level rigor are not enough, which is why we also need to incorporate engaging, affirming, and meaningful instruction. And engaging instruction nurtures students' roots and their aspirations. Affirming instruction nurtures students' identities. And meaningful instruction nurtures students' agency and advocacy for change and impact in the world. Grade level, engaging, affirming, and meaningful instruction has nurturing student experiences at the center. When we look at how to best provide grade level instruction, there are two components at work. The first is the materials we use, and the second is the way we use these materials. Grade level instruction involves not just a product, but also our own decisions and beliefs about what students can and will do in the classroom. Before educators start thinking about daily lessons, we need to make sure everyone is familiar with the standards. And it's important that we do this because standards are the backbone of grade level instruction. Planning with the standards in mind is not only critical to student success, but is also an equity move to ensure all students have an opportunity to achieve grade level expectations. If students aren't doing standards aligned work, we can't be sure they're on their way to realizing their full academic potential. In order to prioritize grade level learning, educators can follow these five small steps. And these are steps that we recommend in our professional development: annotating the standards, doing the work of the lesson, clarifying the main lesson objective, writing learning goals for each section, and labeling each section as essential or assisting. Now let's look at engaging instruction. Pay close attention to the bolded phrases: persistent, build students' interest, disrupting their beliefs. This is integral to providing GLEAM instruction. When we say engaging, we're not talking about joy, although we're not precluding that either. We're talking about keeping students involved in rigorous learning and productive struggle. And as educators, we recognize that the responsibility is on us to create the conditions for engaging instruction, not on students to be engaged. One way to think about engaging instruction is maintaining the right balance between the challenge of the task and the ability of the doer. If the challenge is too great, the result is frustration. If the challenge is not great enough, the result is boredom. When there is a balance between the two, the result is engagement. And one way we recommend educators to provide engaging instruction is through the use of scaffolding. We can scaffold by eliminating elements that are unfamiliar or not yet fluent, but are not the central focus of the learning. This frees working memory for the grade level thinking and learning we desire. And there are ways to scaffold. So, first is how educators construct the task, meaning the structure of tasks given to students and their associated texts and materials, basically what's on the page. And the second way is how educators present the task, meaning directions students are given and the ways they perform activities in the classroom. Basically, what educators say to prepare and move students through an activity. Now, let's revisit the definition of affirming instruction one more time. Instruction acknowledging ethnic, racial, linguistic identities within context of grade level work. In order to affirm students' identities, educators need to learn more about who they are outside of school in an attempt to connect their home lives to their classroom experiences. As they consider helping students become culturally competent, a part of that is acknowledging that students bring knowledge and experiences to the classroom that hold value. In other words, all students have knowledge that is often ignored and are undervalued in classroom. Educators must find ways to honor and value the knowledge they bring to the classroom and help others see their knowledge and experiences as assets for learning and valuable contributions. It is affirming when students have opportunities to be viewed as experts or have family members recognized as experts for their skills, cultural knowledge, and or life experiences. And we do this by finding opportunities to leverage students' funds of knowledge to enhance lessons and affirm students' identities. And while there isn't an expectation that educators incorporate students' funds of knowledge into every task, they can zoom out when planning at the beginning of a unit to see the places that could work. From there, they must always seek out opportunities for students to see themselves reflected in the curriculum and be affirmed, knowing that their communities and family values have a place in their school lives. And finally, meaningful instruction. So let's highlight two parts in the definition here. First part is understanding and critiquing dominant cultural norms, which means understanding problems and disparities in our society and culture. And the second part is examining their community's social position to foster a sense of advocacy and change. So students aren't just identifying problems, but they're also working towards solutions. Meaningful instruction isn't just a type of lesson plan or an instructional strategy. Rather, it's the interplay between these three factors listed here: teachers' sociopolitical consciousness, students' funds of knowledge and interest, and grade level knowledge and skills. The importance of the first component cannot be overstated because the teacher needs to understand the issues involved for him or herself in order to teach the lesson. Opportunities for meaningful instruction will only become visible when they resonate inside of the teacher. And then the teacher needs to recognize students' interests and draw out their own ideas. And finally, it's important to emphasize the role of grade level knowledge and skills. Many people think of socio-political issues steering instruction away from the curriculum, but a skillful teacher uses these issues to show students the power of what they're learning in school. Sociopolitical consciousness is about knowing about the world, our society, and the cultures and communities to which we are attached personally and professionally. It means asking these four questions at all times. What's going on? Why does it matter? Whom does it affect and how does it affect them? And how could you do something about it?
Thank you, Jimmy. Such important work that you and your colleagues are doing at Unbound Ed. Um, I'm going to turn this over to Denise next, who's going to tell us about how do we prepare students to be future ready.
Thank you so much,
You're
Doris.
welcome.
All right. So, here at PLTW, Project Lead the Way, we provide transformative learning experiences for students from pre K all the way to grade 12 and to teachers across the country. We create an engaging, hands on classroom environment and by empowering students to develop in demand knowledge and the skills that they need to thrive outside of school and into college and career. We also provide teachers with the training and the resources and the support that they need to engage these students into real world learning. Our pathways in computer science, engineering, and biomedical science engage students in hands on activities, projects, problems by empowering them to solve real world challenges and inspiring them to reimagine how they see themselves. We have trained over 80,000 teachers and we are growing substantially each month. We are in over 12,000 schools and growing, reaching across over 1 million students. A little bit history of PLTW. We have founded in 1997 with the goal of providing world-class activity, project, and problem-based curriculum. As I mentioned, we are over in 12,000 schools, which we provide PLTW programs across PK to 12th grade to millions of students nationwide. We help prepare our students for success and their future for readiness of college and careers. The courses offer our students a range of learning experiences that help them master foundational content knowledge and develop the critical thinking so that they can become more proficient in a range of skills that are often found in post-secondary and the modern workforce. We also have a end of course exam that I will be discussing momentarily that uses scenarios and other complex item types to gauge more of the than just basic content knowledge. Students who do take our PLTW courses can use that credit for high school graduation and in many cases for college credit as well. At our glance, our curriculum pathways include at the earlier grade level from pre-K to grade 5, we have our curriculum called Launch. In our Gateway, which is our middle school program from grade 6 through 8, and our high school pathway that includes biomedical science, computer science, and our engineering, which make up the majority of the PLTW courses. Here is a quick overview, a closer look at the titles and programs that is found within our curriculum at each corresponding grade level. Our programs inspire students to question what is possible and helping them prepare for long term success. Each of these courses engage their students in hands on activities, the projects, and problems that are reflective of real world challenges. This compelling real world approach empowers our students to learn essential in demand skills validated by world's leading companies while also providing an invaluable connection between what students are learning in the classroom today and how they can apply it to the paths that they'll take in the future. Research is repeatedly showing that there are many additional benefits to hands on problem based learning that extends just basic STEM mastery. The unique problem based instruction design from pre K to grade 12 content incorporate real world and open ended problems by encouraging student engagement. The activities, projects, and problem APB graph that you see above here includes consistent across all grade levels and programs. The activities that are opportunities for our students to build upon the knowledge and success and skills, projects, which are guided investigation that allows our students to discover connections and make meaning, and problems, real world, open ended, and collaborative, calling for transfer and application of knowledge and skills. This unique approach empowers our students to become independent learners who take ownership of their learning while developing skills set to apply to an open ended real world problem. PLTW engages our students in authentic experience that translate career awareness and exploration into career preparation. Making connections to careers is important because students can't be what they can't see. We help our students develop and see the relevance of in demand, transportable skills as they progress through the PLTW experience and empower and inspire our students to make informed decisions related to career planning. Opportunities for career awareness, exploration, and planning include exploring and bringing awareness to the diversity and opportunities and breadth of careers, as well as promoting student interest and curiosity. Some of the student outcomes that we see across from grades pre-K and in the K-12 are college enrollment retention and career outcomes. On the first column, we see that students who take PLTW courses are more likely to take dual credit courses in high school and graduate from high school. Some of the reports that we have here include some of the work that we have done across higher ed and K-12 institutions. College and enrollment and retention, we see that students attending schools with PLTW have been found to be 7% more likely to enroll in post secondary education than students in non PLTW schools. For our career outcomes, we have seen that for those students who did not enroll in college, PLTW students' median wage was 13.6% more than their peers. The transportable and technical skills was derived from a research conducted several years ago to identify which are the skills that industry and workforce are seeking and what they value in the job market. These are the skills that PLTW integrate in our curriculum. As you can see, we have collaboration, problem solving, ethical reasoning and mindset, communication, critical and creative thinking, and technological skills. Some of our career learning partnerships are mentioned here above, and we are also pursuing others. We have several internships from Lockheed Martin, Toyota Fame Apprenticeships, California Society of Anesthesiologists, and we believe that by industry partnering with PLTW for diversity, public research, and teacher professional development, as well as a national scope. This gets into our assessments, our end of course assessments that is provided for our high school students. We built these assessments from the perspectives of higher education, industry, and secondary education. Our assessments are technically defensible and sound instruments with real world, engaging, and problem inquiry based items. We have assessment of subject matter knowledge as well as incorporation of those PLTW transportable skills. We also include in our pathway and offering our informative assessment tool, which brings value to our students to understand what the assessment will be and have an experience early on to be administered. Our assessment at a glance, we have these are assessments of our high school. They are offered once per year per student near the end of the course. We have 15 courses in our high school that are offering our end of courses. They address both the technical and transportable skills. We have our assessments that are aligned to the curriculum as well as to industry and to higher education. The assessments are offered in a proctored environment in the classroom and may be proctored by the teacher. Typically, an assessment holds 50 items with 2 sections, with about 1 hour per section that can be taken over the course of the same day or over 2-day period. As you can see here, their assessments are not only comprised of the technical and STEM skills that one is needed, but we also measure mastery in problem solving, critical thinking, collaboration, communication, and ethical reasoning. These were the same values that industry and workforce valued and thought that these were the most valuable and important to uprising students as they enter in their higher ed and career workforce. The design of the assessments is that it is on time, but it is designed to be completed within two 40-minute periods. The assessments present complex and real world scenarios. Each scenario needs to be rich enough to allow the students to be engaged and to exemplify what is happening in the classwork. We built these scenarios as a representation of best fitting to a performance task and how it's relevant to these real world contexts. Our assessments also include simulations and technology enhanced items to develop and encourage student interaction. By building these assessments, we began the research back in 2016. We have unified with strong academic, industry experts, and leading educational experts in and around assessment design, psychometrics, as well as industry and workforce. We have established a technical advisory committee who has reviewed and been a partner for the validation and reliability of our assessments. We have designed and built assessment advisory panels that helped form our test blueprints. We have discussed and formed committees on test development and assessment design research, as well as multiple item design panels. We've partnered with ethics advisory panel with esteemed colleagues, as well as creative and thinking panel, and we've included teachers from our high schools and across from middle schools to help us think about what is most valuable in teaching and how we assess those skills that are often taught in the curriculum. A look at the score report. Our score reports are given immediately. Our scores are provided in a PDF format and aggregated into spreadsheets for our educators within a matter of 24 hours. Our scale score is a score range of 100 to 600 with increments of 10. And we have achievement level descriptors or cut scores determined in advance by a panel of experts that is based on the course description. Our skill clusters are a combination of similar content areas for reporting purposes. And lastly, our delivery model. This is employed through a very secure, robust technology platform that we offer that many other high stakes and summative assessments providers do provide. It is a classroom delivery. As I mentioned, our teachers can be proctors. We have embedded supports, tools with universal design. We have additional tools that we provide with calculator and formulated sheets, as well as accommodations with paper, pencil, and for our Braille students. The test is delivered through a security internet browser, which are installed in the student devices, and daily access codes are required so that we ensure the integrity and validity of these exams. That concludes this portion of the webinar. Thank you so much. Doris, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Denise. Thank you so much. Really interesting and robust program in STEM education. Before we move further, I want to and talk about my section, which is about measuring these skills. I just want to do a little poll. How are you, the attendees, measuring higher order skills? And if you're like, how are you doing this? We did ask about embedded in classroom, but how do you measure them, even though you have curriculum in the classroom? Through observation, mostly. Summative assessment, interesting. Let's see. If you're doing other, what are you doing? If you wouldn't mind putting it into chat. Oh, you reteach. Thank you, Doritha. So it's mostly through observation in the classroom of these higher order skills. There is some assessment in the classroom, and a few of you are doing either summative assessments or student survey. Comparative assessment, interesting, but mostly through classroom observation, um, projects, so like a classroom assignment. Great, thank you. So I'm going to talk a little bit about critical thinking and how we measure these skills. Because, as I mentioned before, we see this initiative, and the reason why you're here is because you know that these skills are important for success in career and in academic and career success. And there's a lot of effort put towards thinking about how to teach these things, but less so in terms of the assessment. And we know that these are important. As I mentioned before, portrait of graduate, these are popping up all over the place. And you see these higher order skills showing up in the various portraits that we've looked at. But there's a gap in what employers want and the current reality. So research outside of, this is independent research of about 64,000 managers. 60% of hiring managers say that recent college graduates do not have the necessary critical thinking and problem solving skills. And 44% say that the graduates lack in writing proficiency. And if you recall from the very beginning of our webinar, critical thinking and written communication were one of the top two skills that this group thought was essential, right? These are the most important skills. And there's this gap. The research that we do at CAE tells us something as well. So this is a survey result from a group of about 500 students from a higher education institution, public institution, and we asked them, how much do they think employers value critical thinking? How valuable do you think critical thinking skills are to a career? And how valuable do you think they are to success within their university? And on a scale of 1 to 5, meaning 1 is not important at all and 5 being absolutely essential, think that 92% of the students rated it on a scale of 1 through 5, 4 or 5 in terms of how much employers think is important. 95 think that it's important, percent think it's important or very important for their career. And 86 thought it would be very important in terms of success in graduating from their university. This is a paper that my colleagues and I are presenting next week, actually, at AERA, which is a conference for educational researchers. The data that we've collected within at CAE through our critical thinking assessment shows that 60% of US students entering college and universities are not proficient in these skills. So they're graduating from high school and they're entering into a higher education program, and 60% of them from our sample of over 125,000 students are not proficient in critical thinking. And yet these are skills that are important once they graduate college. And so the idea is that, does college do a good job of increasing these skills and making them um, you know, viable for their careers? And the answer is not really, because at the other end, when employers are trying to hire them, they're not skilled. We have a database of international students. So this is not just the United States, but we have students from Finland, from Mexico, from Italy, from the UK. And we show that 42% of entering students are proficient, but that means that about 60% of them are not. So this is prevalent not just within the United States, but it's a problem internationally as well. So why are these skills so important? Well, the research that we've done, my colleagues and I have done, have shown that those who do better in critical thinking as measured by our assessment have higher cumulative GPAs by the time they graduate from university, and they have better better post-university outcomes, meaning we followed a set of students longitudinally, and we looked at their employment, whether they were employed full time within their field, what their salary was, what their graduate school enrollment, as well as interviewing their hiring managers and seeing if they were up for promotions and what their annual reviews looked like. So we see this correlation between better critical thinking skills and better outcomes for students. So, question for the group again, what is or would be the greatest challenge for teaching and measuring these skills for you? Because we know that they're really important, and and yet it's a challenge to measure and to teach them because the focus has been so much on ELA, math, science, social studies. Yeah, time to create assessment or materials is a big deal. Too many other requirements conflict with other tests and other requirements within the classroom and the school year. Oh, comment from Sue about 8th grade. So these are not the research that I'm showing is for higher education students, but that doesn't mean that we can't start earlier, middle school, elementary school, with working on student skills, because I think a lot of it has just been passing the buck to, oh, they'll get to it in high school, they'll get to it in college, and then by the time students graduate college and they enter the workforce, hiring managers are expecting them to have these skills, and yet they're lacking in these skills. Great, thank you. 60% of you saying it's time to create assessments and materials, and 26% saying too many other requirements. So now we're going to open this up to question and answer. So we have a few of these questions. Okay, first one is for Jimmy. What if a student has given critical thought to who they are, where they come from, and where they want to go? How do you develop engaging instruction then?
Right. So I think, as I mentioned earlier in my presentation, I think once students have actually given thought to these things, it's ensuring that lessons, the instruction incorporates their experiences into the teaching. So making sure, so for example, like simple steps that can be taken is like when you're creating a math problem, right? Make sure you're using students' names or somehow connect the math problem to their experiences so that it feels personal, right? So that it feels that their identities are also being affirmed and they can also feel engaged with the material they're being introduced to.
Thank you. Denise, do you have any comments about instruction, like how to develop engaging instruction?
I think it's really about looking at hands-on experiences for students to be engaged in real-world applications, and all about empowering teachers to be able to help by through professional development, exploring opportunities where critical thinking and engagement is really high, something for students that we can all apply. So I think it's a matter of encouraging our teachers and providing strong research opportunities and professional development guidance from our teachers to empower our students to continue to implement hands-on and real engaging material.
Agree, thank you. Next question for you, Denise. How does Project Lead the Way value assessment? And another one related to Project Lead the Way. What report did the skills for Project Lead the Way come from?
Sure. That was the skills report was from a blue glass study that we did, burning glass study, excuse me, that was done years ago. And we do have a link for that. It is on our available, I believe, on our website, where we looked at the skills from workforce and secondary education. I also forgot to mention that we recently completed a study that has yet to be publicized, but we do have our internal final copy ready, where we are about to release the study, which we worked with one of our tech members and also a higher ed career expert, Dr. David Conley, where he analyzed our assessments as well as our curriculum, high school curriculum in particular, to college and career readiness success skills using the four keys model, which is adapted at over 2,700 universities. And there has been tremendous value and alignment towards what is being taught in our PLTW curriculum, as well as what we assess in our assessments that align fairly nicely to college and career readiness. Um, and I believe, forgive me if I'm wrong, what was the initial question around, I believe,
How
assessment?
does, yeah, how does Project Lead the Way value assessments?
Yes, assessments. We have our assessments. We also we have our summative assessments, our end of course assessments that I shared with you all here. We place tremendous value on our assessments because I think without assessments, there really is no way to measure student outcomes and to be able to look back and see how well the instruction is being applied and whether or not where students are making differences and where they need some additional strategies and assistance with. So the end of course, while it is a summative, we do offer what we call our formative practices, and that can be seen in our gateway across end of unit assessments, our both formative and summative like assessments within the gateway model. So we do offer both the system of assessments of formative, instructional, and summative assessments. And we do place great value, PLTW, as one should, with curriculum being closely aligned with our assessments.
Great. Yeah,
Thank you.
they curriculum and assessments should go hand in hand for sure in terms of, thinking about the way that you develop both because they're essential. They're parts of the same process, right? Like teach,
Exactly.
learn, assess. Yeah.
Exactly. Never separated, never isolated, always in one. So, yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. Great question.
Thanks, Denise. Next question really is about critical thinking and the definition. So whenever I'm asked this question, it's critical thinking is such a huge domain, and if you ask 10 different researchers, they'll give you 10 different definitions for it. We don't purport to measure all of critical thinking, so we're measuring a very specific part of critical thinking, which is whether students can analyze and synthesize information and put it together. They're given a problem that mimics the real world, something that they would encounter if they're a high school student, like an internship or an after school club, or if they're in college, maybe their first job or part of something classroom related. And they're asked to make a decision about a problem and or a recommendation. And that problem or recommendation, there's not, just like the real world, there's not a correct answer. And that's the thing with critical thinking, right? It's not like a mathematics problem where you're asked to solve, find for x in an algebra equation where there's one answer for x. With these kinds of higher order skills, it's much more nuanced and also not just one direct way. So what's unique about the way we assess is there's more than one correct answer. It's really how you justify that answer that we're measuring you on. So we don't think that it should be done. These types of skills should be measured using a multiple choice assessment because that way you're basically asking students to select a correct answer as opposed to what's in the real world, the skills that they would be needing for school, academic, and career success. They need to generate a response and come up with a solution. And whether that solution is a good one or not really depends on whether they're skilled at critical thinking and problem solving. So it's, can they be provided with a problem? Can they find a solution to that problem and make a recommendation? Use data that is given to them to justify. So they can't just be like, oh, I read this on the internet somewhere from some blog, and so therefore I'm going to make this decision, right? We also look at things like information literacy and data literacy, et cetera. So we want someone's comment is high student engagement. Yeah, we want this to be not just filling in bubbles, right? Or like clicking on things on their mouse on a computer, but coming up with a solution themselves that's unique. So every student comes up with a different recommendation, and we measure them on how well they use information that's given to them to think critically about the problem that they're given. So, another question coming about higher order thinking. These are skills that are outside of content domain. So they're not um, ELA, math, science, or social studies content knowledge. These are things like we mentioned before. I can actually, if we go back to the slides here, these, right? These are some, not all. The way that EdWeb is set up, we can only put 5, and we thought it'd be nice to have them all be C's. So citizenship, collaboration, communication, creative problem solving, critical thinking. These are all skills that are higher order because they're cross domain, right? They're domain agnostic. They can be used in any of these. And there was a comment that came through. If anybody is attending AERA next week, my colleagues and I will be presenting data that we've done, research that we've done, actually related to the slides of students like self-reporting that they're excellent at critical thinking skills, and then they get their assessment scores back, and they're not as excellent as they think. We have a session. It's on Saturday. If you are attending, we'd love to see you there, and you can come say hello, and we can give you the full paper if you're interested in reading that. So it looks like we're getting to the end of the hour, and I want to be sure to go through a few of the last like housekeeping things that we want to get through. So if you are interested at all in these assessments about critical thinking, please reach out to us and we can talk more about performance-based paradigm for measuring these higher order skills. Thank you for attending, and it was a pleasure meeting with all of you and speaking with you. And thank you so much to Denise and Jimmy for being our wonderful panelists. And I hope everybody has a wonderful day.